Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to my channel today. I'm Kevin, and today we're back to our biopsychological topics. So, in today's topics, we are going to talk about the second examples that stand for the criticalism of the question, or let's say of the side that if the behavior of the mental of behavior, or the way that we think and the way that our brain work, is it physiological or psychological, and why does that affect the our argument about the problems that this type of dichotomy runs into. So, well, you see, in the last topic, we talk about why physiological or psychological thinking question runs into difficulty. It is because that sometimes there are things that even when it's so complicated and the brain are believed to yeah be incapable of involving such a complexity and such a complex and hard things for the human to decide what will they do. So many people back then believe that that things, that thought, that emotion comes from the spirit, come from the souls, which is something that the church stand in charge of to develop and to, let's say, nurture for their believers. So, well, today we are going to talk about the case of the chimps with mirrors, which not support the argument of the complexity of the brain and how they can handle hard work and hard thought, which was already which was already supported by the example of the man who fell out of bed because of throwing his own leg, that he don't know, or he didn't know that it was his own leg because of suffering from nausea. So, well, that is a little bit of review for you all about the last topic we've talked about, how that physiological and psychological thinking run into difficulty, how that we found out the examples that stands against their point, and of course today we're going to dig deep into the second examples of self-awareness of an animal that is not really human, but but is indeed have a similar brain structure with human, which is chimpanzee. So you see, in the last topic, we've heard about the fact that the church gave the point that only human can have a complicated emotion. Only human can share their thought, and only human have a complexity in the way they think and structure information. But you see, the most important thing is that humans are aware of themselves. They know who they are. They know their role. They know what they can do. And they know if they're looking at themselves in a mirror or if they're looking at someone else. So let's say if a chimpanzee sees itself in a mirror, do you think that this type of monkey animal will going to act like it's seeing its own self, or will it act like it's seeing a weird monkey, a weird chimpanzee doing the same thing, a weird friend doing the same thing that it is doing? So there are many factors that contribute to self-awareness of organism. And one way to evaluate how much self-aware an animal is to confront that animal with a mirror. Invariably, the first reaction of a chimpanzee or a monkey or even a fish, which is a little bit interesting based on my personal experience that I will show you after we talk about this former case. So, well, the first reaction is to respond as the chimpanzee was seeing another chimpanzee. So you see, every time we see somebody like us, but when we don't know about the mirror, we think that it's just, well, somebody look exactly like us, but it's not like us. And I remember how that goes for me. Well, the first time I see a mirror was when I was like, well, 3 or 4 years old. Back then I have let's say an ability to remember impressive memory. And the first time I see the mirror was one of those important and, well, memorable moment that I remember until now. The first time I see myself, that I see the light of my own self, let's say, well, shining back into my eyes and showing my own image, I was completely stunned. Well, it is because that, well, back then I watched Naruto, an anime in Japanese that contained the, yeah, let's say, it contained a technique that allowed the user to, well, shadow clone themselves. And back then, when I see that, I really thought that I accidentally have the ability to shadow clone my own self. And then I even think that that is some friend from the, well, from the other family that just accidentally wear the same clothes and the same shoes that I am wearing. So I was wearing, sorry. So you see, until I realized that it was my own self in the mirrors, it took me like 5 or 4 minutes back then. And that is the amount of time I need a 4 years old child need to recognize and to be aware of its own self. So compare with a chimpanzee, you know, it also have the same ability. The first time seeing itself in the mirror, a chimpanzee will react as it was seeing a friend. It was just look similar because the chimpanzee never see itself. And after that, it starts to use the mirror to groom, to inspect parts of its body, and to experiment with its reflection by making face and assuming unusual postures while monitoring and watching how the image that is reflecting on the mirror shows the way it goes. In an attempt to provide even more convincing evidence of self-awareness, Gallup, a scientist, devised a clever test in the year of 1983. Well, in this experiment, each chimpanzee was anesthetized, which means they was injected by the scientists so that they go to sleep. And while they were sleeping, well, the eyebrow was painted with a red odorless dye, which means the odorless terms mean they have no smell. You cannot smell anything. Well, it's just simply like, well, you cannot smell it. You can only see the color, but it will not going to give out smell. And because of that, until the chimpanzee look into the mirror, it will never see the red dye on its eyebrow. And following recovery from anesthesia, the mirror was also reintroduced in the room. Upon seeing its bent eyebrow in the mirror, each chimpanzee repeatedly touched the marked area on its eyebrow while watching the image. Moreover, there was over a threefold increase in the time that the chimps spent looking in the mirror, and several kept touching their eyebrows and smelling their fingers as if they were trying to check if there was something on their eyebrow. I suspect that most of us would respond pretty much the same way when we see something weird on our body, not just our eyebrow, but, well, especially blades that we cannot check for our own self, except when we look into a mirror. So you see, there were no experience for the chimpanzee before. It never see itself in a mirror before. It don't know that there are something that can show or reflect its own image by using light or other rules of physics. And because of that, the first time the chimpanzee look into the mirror, it thinks that the reflection is another friend in the same species. And you see, after that, a while later, the chimpanzees start to realize that there are no friends. That was their own self reflected by the mirror light. And didn't wasn't that considered as self-aware? Know who you are, know the person standing in front of you are like you or not, and understand how to recognize your own self. So, well, you see, the church and the Descartes dualism, which which argue that the mind of human was separate into physical part, which is the brain, and the spiritual part, which is the soul, that was controlled and taught by the church. And now we see something just as similar, like the way a person understand about themselves, the complexity of brain structure and the complexity of how an animal understands about its very own existence also appears in the monkey, in the chimpanzee, those that was never human. And because of this, the reaction of chimpanzees to their own image indicate that they are self-aware. And because they are self-aware, which means they hold somehow some part of human ability, then they do have a soul. But according to the church theories back then, only humans have souls. And this is where the turning point appears. It helped science to win over the belief of God only, and the way that the church talked about souls and spirit was broken down from this moment on. And of course, this is not the only case, the only incident happens in the years of the, well, turning point where the belief about the existence and the rules of the world turning from the belief of God into science and into physics rules. There are many different types of case and different events that contribute to this alter in the era. But well, we're not going to talk deep into that in this video. And well, you see, after all, we all know that the way we think, the emotion we have comes from our brain. But still, even when we figured out that it was all the brain activities all this time, we still didn't fully understand how our brain works. And that shows the potential and how complex our brain is, and how many things we can figure out from the activities and the structure of our brain. So make question, learn more, and try to indicate things by looking into this world by real examples, by inferencing, and by critical thinking to challenge everything. And well, because this topic is just, well, it just appeared in order to show you guys the second examples of the chimps with the mirrors to indicate their ability of self-awareing. So, well, after we finish the example, there are nothing else to talk about. And in the next video, we are going to, well, keep on break down the problems of the dualism, or you see, the dichotomies theories that was made by biologists and biopsychologists in the past about the way that human can only make two sides to decide whether it's good or bad, whether it's nature or nurture, whether it's inherit or learn, whether it's from mental or from physiology. So, well, until then, this video will stop, and yeah, of course, this is the end of this video, and we will see each other next time, and we will talk about if the nature or nurture thinking runs into problems, what the problem is, and what is the example, stance, and support for the argument against that ideas. And now it's time for us to say goodbye then. See you in my next video, and well, see ya. Bye bye.